So could everyone please take a seat? We'll get started shortly. Here we go. Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to everyone who's gathered here tonight, and welcome to everyone who's joining us online as well. Thank you to Dr. Ruby Davis and her team for hosting us here tonight. We enjoy the venue. My name is Jerry Cruz. I'm the Dean of the SIU School of Medicine. Tonight, I'll be performing the duties of presiding co-chair. I'd also like to recognize my fellow co-chairs who've been instrumental in leading the commission, Joanne Johnson and Shadia Massey. The November 18th Massey Commission meeting is now called to order. We have a quorum of our members present. One of our commissioners has requested to join us virtually. Do we have a motion to allow Veronica Espina to join remotely? So moved by Commissioner Phillips and seconded by Commissioner Wesley. All in favor say aye. Opposed, nay. That motion is adopted. The first official act of the Massey Commission was to issue requests for federal and state agencies to formally investigate the sheriff's office. Sangamon County received a letter from the Department of Justice on November 14th, 2024. The letter was not addressed to the Massey Commission as a response to our request for investigation, but make no mistake about it, the letter is responsive to our needs for further fact-finding, accountability, and outside review of the policies and practices that may have led to the Massey murder. If all parties are willing to fully cooperate, Sangamon County can begin to work on system solutions based on the findings that may be revealed by the independent investigation. The following statement was issued to the media by Massey Commissioner Co-Chair Joanne Johnson, and I'll read that statement from Commission Co-Chair Johnson. Quote, "We have shared the copy of the letter from the Department of Justice to Sangamon County with all of the commissioners and co-leads of our law enforcement, hiring, training, wellness, and cultural competency work group. We strongly encourage the Sangamon County Sheriff's Department, the Emergency Telephone System Department, and the State's Attorney Office to answer all of the Department of Justice's questions in the letter so that we can all understand exactly what happened before, during, and after Sonia Massey was killed by a Sangamon County deputy. These answers will help inform our work as we continue to research reform ideas and recommendations at the Massey Commission to make sure that such a tragedy like this never happens again." End quote. We'll continue to monitor this news as we move forward with our work. This is our second meeting with the full commission, and we have a full agenda tonight. I will review it now. Tonight, we intend to finalize our mission and values, and we will have presentations and discussion on two important issues. Number one, 708 mental health boards, and number two, the power to recall a sheriff in Sangamon County. These two important issues are relevant to the Sonia Massey tragedy and are urgent because they involve ballot initiatives that must be considered by the county by January 13th, if they are to make it on the ballot and be presented to Sangamon County voters at the next election in April. While our preferred method of reviewing issues for possible recommendations will include evaluations of issues and best practices by our work groups, we recognize that pressing issues with clear timelines for action could be considered only by the full commission. To meet these specific deadlines for the county's consideration, we are discussing these issues tonight and may take some action for further study, or we may advance resolutions tonight urging county action in a swift manner in order to meet the ballot deadline. Following these agenda items, we'll have time for public comment. If you wish to speak tonight, please sign up at the table near the front entrance. Each speaker will be allowed to speak for 3 minutes and will be called in the order in which they sign up. Our public comment period is limited to less than an hour. As we move forward with this work, we will always remember the life of Sonia Massey and are thankful for the continued leadership of her family as we move forward. Okay, the first order of business is approval of minutes. Commissioners, you have had the opportunity to review the meeting minutes from October 21st. Are there any additions or corrections? A motion by Mr. Wesley, second by Ms. Rubelke. All in favor say aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. And now I'll ask commissioners serving as work group leaders to present a 2 to 3 minute verbal report on your first gathering. First, Sunshine Clemens, law enforcement hiring, training, wellness, and cultural competence.
Thank you. I'm going to do this from the top of my head because I took my laptop back to the car and I forgot it. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Can everyone in the back hear me? Okay, thank you. I'm going to be doing this from memory because I took my laptop to the car and forgot about this part. We met on November the 9th for our first meeting and had a quorum that was able to have a good discussion around the presentation that was sent to our group from the county board chairs, struggling to think of their names now. Del Giorno and Latham, yes, apologies. We had a discussion around the we had a discussion around the name of our group and the large scope of work that we have. There was conversation around what looking at mental health or wellness would look like for our group, knowing that there is a work group that is focused on mental health as well, and had dialogue around what our group would focus on, some potential suggestions of subject matter experts that we have already begun to reach out to speak to our group. One of those is the Sheriff Accountability Action Group, who has already submitted some recommendations that we were able to discuss in that meeting as well, working on getting them to be able to do a presentation to go into further dialogue around that content. And we went through our the norms for the group. This was our first meeting, so it was a lot of sort of foundational work on the content that we will be working through, what we felt was appropriate. The group getting to know each other as our first meeting. Some of the people that are on our work group were not commission members, so this was the first time of our group having contact with each other. So we talked through our backgrounds. We talked through what we wanted to accomplish with this work group, and everyone gave suggestions on different subject matter experts. When we created a list of probably 10 different subject matter experts to talk to our group that we're going to start reaching out to on. A lot of it was focused around mental health, and we want to look into policies that will sort of help guide this discussion on whether we're going to be focusing on specifically on mental health for the officers, or whether we're looking at community-based mental health and what that looks like with having another group that is also working on mental health, and how that work is going to be divided up so that we can make sure that we're not letting anything slip through the cracks on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, Brian Wojcicki, Integrated Mental Health Services and Emergency Response.
I'll probably start with maybe where Sunshine you left off. I think some of our groups are probably going to have some overlapping areas of interest. My goal and what we kind of talked about with our group is maybe earlier on trying to schedule some of those joint meetings. Just a few: the co-responder, community emergency services, mobile crisis unit, dispatch, how dispatch with mental health. I don't know how we're going to schedule all these meetings, but we're maybe have to do, I don't know if we're allowed to do 2 a month sometimes, but pretty clear it's going to be needed. Okay. The otherwise good meeting, most everybody was able to make it. probably covered a lot of the same things that everybody else did. Tried to highlight and prepare the group a little bit that not everything is going to go through the work group, but we certainly have deliverables that are expected from us in the work group. Tonight's presentation on 708 Mental Health Board, try to address that. Actually, that's why I reminded everybody that not everything is going to come to the work group. If as a commission, there are times we take action. Maybe a couple other things that came up. Actually, one was something that had already happened that will probably be for us, for our new business maybe, but it came up in our new business, was incident reporting, or some type of process if folks in the commission or our work groups get contacted in a manner that they don't feel comfortable, that we at least have some process. In the situation that already occurred, they were at an employer with a process that, was able to handle it, but it seems like something we should probably have not just check the boxes, but make people feel comfortable. Then the only other one, actually, I would ask that we even think about it, and I brought it up as new business, was the traditional terms conflict of interest. We use the word transparency a lot, so maybe it's less scary to call it transparency of interest as we're maybe getting closer to our recommendations, because we're all involved with different things in our community, so that probably is fair. I'll give the 2 cents I gave my group. I don't think it ever means that somebody should not talk or have to leave the room just because they have a conflict or something that overlaps. I think actually a lot of the times they're usually the most educated, so long as they're maybe not pushing it one way or the other. That was our group.
Thank you very much. Kristen Rubelke, Community Education on Public Health and Safety.
Okay. The Community Education on Public Health and Safety Work Group met on Saturday, November 9th at 2 p.m. The meeting involved introductions and discussions of the board and its scope of work for the work group. There was a lot of concern that included adequacy of current trainings and procedures that law enforcement are provided to ensure that they're best prepared to support the community and receive support when they need it. The group pointed out the need to review systems that the community engages with prior to direct contact with the police and their effectiveness, such as the 911 dispatch system. As well, we discussed systems of post-contact, such as the jail too. There were different viewpoints that were presented regarding how and what to narrow the scope of focus of the work group to. Dr. Smyer and I have gotten together, and we're hoping that the next work group meeting will smooth out what the focus will be. The name of the work group was also needing further clarification or might need to be changed as well. Our next meeting will be either Saturday, December 7th or Saturday, December 14th. Both Dr. Smyer and myself feel confident that this work group, with their energy and enthusiasm and expertise, will be able to provide tangible results for the Massey Commission. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. Veronica Espina, Economic Disparities and Service Accessibility, and Veronica's joining us virtually, so you're on.
Thank you. So we met on Monday, November the 4th at Resource 1, 6 p.m. We had a great conversation, even though we didn't meet quorum. We had my colleague, Dr. Sheila Caldwell, started with the discussion, requested us, she asked what are the facts that we can identify that will inform the work group objectives. So we specifically talk about that in the Springfield Black and Brown communities, including immigrants and people of color, experience disparities in banking and lending, housing, employment, education, and transportation services. We also identified that service accessibility in mental health, medical services, and language interpreting services is problematic due to existing barriers such as lack of health insurance, lack of trust or bias towards mental health services, and lack of existing services in other languages besides English. We also include a perception that staff in these areas don't possess cultural competencies or training to work with Black and Brown communities. We had very fruitful conversations and different points of view. Things that were outstanding and we didn't resolve were specific policy recommendations and implementation strategies. However, we made a couple of suggestions. I proposed 2 experts to present at our January meeting, and that is in the works because we need to figure out how we're hiring these experts. One expert is Dr. Lisa Johnson, Associate Professor of Sociology at UIS, who is a researcher and an expert on economic disparities and residential segregation, and Beth Langen, who is our city expert on disability rights and accessibility issues. I also propose that our group review an existing report on economic disparities done, including the city of Springfield in 2019, which is the governing report called Segregated in the Heartland. And that is basically our homework for our next meeting, which is scheduled for December 2nd, 2024. We emailed that report to all our members on November 7th. So since November 7th till now, we have been, trying to chew through that report, which is very interesting. If you haven't read it, we can send you the link. The report covers the areas of residential segregation, local zoning regulations designed to keep racial segregation in place, and how police and anti-crime measures reinforce segregation, which includes how cities' efforts to get tough on crime can make it harder for low-income residents to find good jobs and housing. This is the 2019 report. The tone was really collaborative. Everybody's very passionate about the work, and we hope to have quorum the next time we meet.
Very much. We'll now turn to mission and values. In our September listening session and our October meeting, we reviewed and discussed both our mission and value statements for this commission. Excuse me. Commissioners, you've had some time to consider the language, some time to review the updated language, which we will put up on the screen now. We'll begin with our edited mission statement. That's in yellow there. To take action and make recommendations that expand safe and equitable access to services by addressing racism and mistrust in law enforcement and other helping professions. Is there any further discussion on this mission statement? Yes, Sunshine.
Yes, so I was virtual on the other meeting, so I was mostly just able to listen and not really engage. I like the revised statement, but I would like to say that I prefer acknowledging systemic racism in there instead of just racism. But I believe there was a point made by someone to take that out, so I just wanted to say that it is my preference to leave that in, but other than that, I do like the revision.
Are there any other comments about the word systemic in this mission statement? Yeah, yes, Jerry. Yeah.
One of community members mentioned last time that we need a motion in order to discuss it.
Mm-hmm.
So if you care to make a motion.
Well, actually, I just for these, I was going to get a motion for everything at the end, including the values. So I think it's okay for the discussion for this. Right? Yeah. Okay. Yes, Jerry. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm the one that brought up the word systemic. I think this better represents what I was thinking than with that word in there.
Okay, so can you help me understand maybe why this better represents? Because we're not talking about like individual officers, we're talking about like the system.
Right. In a nutshell, I spent nearly 29 years in law enforcement. I never saw it. I'm not blind to that. I'm sensitive to it. I did run into people who were prejudiced, some to a fault, about a lot of things specifically. So I'm not comfortable with that word in there. I don't believe that's there. And I've worked with and trained with law enforcement officers from all over the United States because of some of the specific units or specialized units I was in throughout my time there. And I didn't see it. I would be aware of it. I would have said something about it. But to say it, I'm not saying it doesn't exist. So the mistrust in the law enforcement and other, I think that represents what I've seen, what I'm aware of from my perspective.
Okay,
experience.
you know, on second thought, I will entertain a motion so that we can continue the discussion. Susan? Susan?
Okay, I make a
Sunshine.
motion to add systemic into the revision of our draft revision.
Is there a second? Second by Susan. And is there further discussion now? Yeah, Brian?
Yeah, Jerry, I remember you making this, and it's a fair argument, but I'm not gonna lie to you. I got to defer to Sunshine on this, and I think at the end of the day, it's systemic doesn't. It's not saying what you think. Actually, I think it's exactly what we're supposed to be looking into. It's the things that maybe don't get acknowledged or seen or accepted or talked about enough. That's what it's really, I think, getting at. It's maybe not how, and I know it's not going to feel maybe right, but I don't think it's getting at what you're.
I appreciate everybody's effort up here. We're all here for the exact same reason. It's for the Massey family and to make sure that that never occurs, preferably anywhere in the United States or world, but specifically in Sangamon County again. So whatever it takes to get there. I mean, to me, that's just a minuscule wording.
Right.
So I could always say no on acceptance and everybody agrees, we're done with it.
That's great. Any other discussion? Okay, we'll vote then. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, nay. Nay. The motion carries. Okay, now we'll move on to the edited values. Please note that the only value statement that's changed is the value on accountability, but I'll read them all just so we have the proper context. Values, community. The commission is committed to hearing all voices through active listening, through active pursuit of often unheard voices, through engagement with the community. Transparency. The commission is committed to transparent processes, activities, and reporting that is open to the public for scrutiny and comment. Equity. The commission is committed to uncovering inequities in its analyses of policies, programs by evaluating structural racism and other biases. And now the new one, accountability. The commission is committed to modeling structural accountability as it demands the same from other public bodies responsible for serving the community. I'll either entertain discussion or a motion right off the bat here.
Does this include the change that is supposed to be there that you just read off? All right,
Yeah.
so moved.
A motion by Brian.
Second.
And a second, who seconded? Joanne. Any discussion?
A question, what's on here and what's on our page are different. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Sorry? But I wrote in the one that was emailed.
The appropriate one is the one that I read, it's the wrong one on the screen. I'll read it again. The commission is committed to modeling structural accountability as it demands the same from other public bodies responsible for serving the community. Any other question or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. Okay. So now we're ready for our other two major topics of business. We'll move on to our presentations for the evening. Our first set of speakers will provide some information about the purpose and value of establishing a 708 mental health board. There will be four people that will come up to speak who can sit at this table. First, please welcome Ryan Croak to the podium to present Mid-Illinois Medical District resolution calling for a mental health board. Also, please welcome the following panelists for discussion that will follow Ryan's presentation: Lynn Canfield, Mike Murray, and Molly McClay. You can all come on up here. So speakers, please begin with self-introductions before you proceed to present and explain the purpose of your resolution. Once your presentation is completed, we will be open up for discussion and questions from the commissioners.
Is it okay if I just remain seated?
It is.
Okay,
You may remain seated. Anybody
Yeah,
who
yeah.
that mic can have it, but you can stay there.
sounds good. Appreciate it very much, Dr. Cruz. And I just want to start by expressing deep gratitude to every member of the Massey Commission, to the Massey family, to the staff, and all of the stakeholders who have devoted so much of their energy and care to an obviously important mission for our community. On August 29th, the Mid-Illinois Medical District Commission passed a resolution in support of the establishment of a 708 mental health board. The commission did that in response to the tragic murder of Sonia Massey, and we did it in part because of the inspiring work that has unfolded in communities across Illinois. Over 70 communities, 70 counties, including many of our neighboring counties, have decided on their own motion, approved by the voters, and either introduced by county governments, township governments, or city governments, to put a measure before the people to decide whether to devote a portion of local sales or property tax revenues to invest in mental health resources for the community. We at the Medical District Commission, which, as I think everybody knows, includes stakeholders from Memorial, St. John's, Springfield Clinic, the SIU School of Medicine, have heard over and over again that our community is in need of stronger mental health resources to support not just the medical establishment, but families, the law enforcement community, our social services safety net community, all of whom would benefit from a stronger mental health infrastructure in Sangamon County. The resolution, I think, speaks for itself. I'm happy to answer questions. I think the real experts are seated to my right, and I'm honored and deeply, deeply grateful to every one of you for the time and care that you've given this very important work. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, to start out, we're going to show 3 videos that we showed in our community over a period of time that help motivate people to understand what community mental health boards do, because education is the secret and it's hard to get the word out. So Alex, if you can show the 3 videos, they're about 6 minutes. I think you'll find them very moving.
Hi, this is Arlen Gould. I've been a member of the District 21 Board of Education for 29 years. I'm also a member of the Regional School Board in Cook County and have worked very hard in the area of mental health. My interest in the area of mental health goes to the days when I worked for Governor Dick Ogilvy, really one of the great governors in Illinois. And at that time, I was asked to tour Lincoln and Dixon, the 2 warehouses where we kept people with disabilities, mental illness, and physical disabilities. I went through there, and as you have remembered from movies, I saw people rocking on the floor, on ceramic floors, no programming, just rocking on the floor all day long. Those facilities were closed, and Governor Ogilvy committed to building new facilities across the state. In fact, I saw the plans to develop local facilities for individuals with disabilities and mental health issues where they could have supportive care and live in the community. Unfortunately, those facilities were never built. And today, over 50 years later, we're no better off in Illinois in providing care for those with mental illness, and physical disabilities than we were back then. But there's good news. We together can do something about that. You know, we have a saying that if you save one life, you save humanity. We all know somebody who has a disability who needs help. We have a neighbor, we have a friend, we have a wife, we have a child who has mental illness issues, and we can't find care for them. We know that. We know that's on your minds. So what I'm asking you to do today is to join me in approving and passing and voting for the 708 mental health referendum that'll be on the ballot this November. This program will provide funds and resources for the community and community organizations that are providing the badly needed care for our individuals and residents in our community, where today we can't find the care. Join me, please, in helping to save humanity and save a life by voting for the 708 mental health referendum in November. Thank you very much.
Another really important thing about 708 boards and the funding that you receive through that initiative is that the funding is personal. It's in your community, and it's about personal relationships with your neighbors. You know, everybody likes to say, this isn't about stigma. This is about resources. This isn't about not caring for my neighbors or my family or my friends. This is about what's best for everybody. Well, stigma does exist, and stigma does impact immediate access to care, and it has for a long time. So by passing a 708 board and being a part of changing that narrative, stigma does exist. I think it's so yesterday. Stigma should be long gone. We have learned so much through COVID about isolation and being with others, and being alone is not good for anyone. Well, someone who has mental health challenges have even greater fear of what we experienced through COVID. And this 708 board's resources and directing them in a local community allow people to get the help that they need and do it in a supportive way. So if stigma doesn't exist and you really believe that you don't subscribe to stigma as a real thing, then I challenge you to prove it. Prove it by voting for the 708 board initiative and being a part of the solution.
Hi, my name is Lori Graynowie. I volunteer for my local NAMI, and I am the mother of a son who was diagnosed with schizophrenia. Growing up, my son was witty, charming, and smart. He got a perfect math score on his college ACT. He went to University of Illinois for engineering. However, during his senior year of high school, we noticed some changes in him. We found out he was smoking marijuana. He was getting high all the time. After his first year of college, he flunked out. His behavior was becoming more erratic. He told me he thought people could read his thoughts. It took a long time for him to be diagnosed with schizophrenia. And then for a while, everything was better. But like so many other people, he stopped taking medication. He was never really the same again. My son died 6 years ago. Schizophrenia didn't kill him, but it put him in the time and place that did. It changed my life. It changed my family's life. I retired early so that I could advocate for mental health. I am asking you today to vote yes this fall on the referendum to create a 708 community mental health board. Community mental health boards can help fill the gaps in programs and reduce the long wait lists. Our community needs this. Please vote yes.
All right. Hi there, everyone. So the three of us have sort of coordinated our comments, and I've been asked to kind of anchor everyone. So I'll be deferring to Ms. Canville and Mr. Murray later on. Did I say your name? Was it?
You said it perfect.
Okay.
Gotta call me Mike.
Lynn and Mike, I will be deferring to them throughout. So I wanted to introduce myself. My name is Molly McClay, and we're here to talk to you more about the idea of forming a 708 board, or what I'll commonly refer to as a mental health board in Sangamon County, talking more about what a mental health board can do, how you might go about forming one, and on a deeper level, why forming one is an important step for this community, especially in the wake of Sonia Massey's death. So I'm a licensed clinical social worker living in Urbana. I've spent the last 15 years of my life deeply immersed in the mental health profession. Through the course of my time in this work, I've actually gotten involved in my community's own mental health board, where I started as a board member appointed in spring 2022 and now serve as the president and chair of the board as of this summer. However, there's another reason I'm here this evening. I was actually born and raised here in Sangamon County. I spent my infancy, my childhood years, and my adolescent years here, having graduated valedictorian from a county high school here years ago. I won't say how many years, but you can probably look it up. While I understand that a lot of things have changed over time, both in this community and in the way we talk about mental health in general, I know that some things have remained the same, and stigma is very strong. So I'm also going to talk about my own experiences growing up here. As a young person, I was mostly happy and carefree, very social, interested in everything around me. In later elementary school, though, I began to become more anxious. I used to get bullied on the bus. It became really difficult to talk about because I was so sensitive and would cry anytime I brought it up. I would get very anxious on my exams in school. And with all of this, I knew from experience that telling an adult wouldn't always make it better, especially with the bullying, and would likely cause it to get worse. At the same time, a loved one of mine would become very angry after drinking alcohol and would often scare me and make me feel bad about myself. This continued throughout my childhood and adolescent years. Through all of this, I had a lot of people in school, at home, who supported me, loved me, and believed in me. But other kids, and sometimes even adults, would describe me as someone who needed to loosen up, to the point that I began to believe those things about myself instead of realizing I needed help. Still, I thrived in school. I poured myself into my studies, got involved in many different activities. For me, it wasn't enough to just do well. I had to be perfect. But it meant that no one ever suspected anything was wrong. People knew I was sensitive and easily wound up, but no one ever asked. No one checked on my mental health. I felt like my feelings were either too big or invisible. At the end of high school, it got worse. I became depressed and spent long periods of time in my room, stuck in my sorrow. I wanted to physically free the mental pain I felt inside. I wanted to cover up what I was going through, but I wanted desperately for somebody to notice and help me. A few times I begged to see a counselor, even though no one I knew was really talking about therapy or mental health in any kind of positive way. I did not receive help. And school mental health professionals, there were nowhere to be found. It wasn't until I left Sangamon County that I was able to get mental health support. The relief that can come when you finally feel not alone, when you have someone you can open up to, who is ready to help and understands the problem, and you know it's okay to finally talk about it. It's hard to explain how meaningful that is. I've been grateful to have had resources available to me, so I have somewhere to turn for support. There were things that helped me get better, and even though I still struggle with anxiety, depression, and have experienced trauma since, I know that I have resources that can help me. Eventually, I got to the point in my mental health journey where I knew that I could begin to help others too, and that's a big part of why I decided to study mental health and become a resource to others as a social worker. When I do the work that I do, it's important for me to sometimes look back to the young person I used to be, to let her know I'm going to be the support you needed. I'm going to do my best to ensure that as many people as possible have access to mental health resources, and that no one has to go through what I did alone and not knowing where to turn. So as an adult entering the mental health field, I actually came back to Sangamon County to work as a sexual assault survivor advocate and therapy intern back in about 15 years ago. I was surprised to learn of many different resources that the county had to offer in terms of supporting mental health. I learned about substance use intervention programs, domestic violence services, homelessness resources, community mental health programming for psychiatry and general therapy, programs to help individuals with physical and developmental disabilities live more independently. As a professional, I was thrilled to learn of these resources, but I wondered a few things. Why did I not hear of these resources when I was a young person needing support? That led me to wonder how much of the community was aware of these resources. Were they only available or known to a limited few? As a professional, I noticed that sometimes the connection between resources was disjointed, and people would end up in my office asking me to address something that wasn't under my purview. I was involved in some initiatives to strengthen collaborations for survivors of sexual assault in the community, but I was just an intern. I wondered what more could be done. So at that time, I returned to Urbana and became immersed in various mental health resources in Vermilion and Champaign counties in a variety of spaces, including at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, where I eventually was hired to lead sexual assault prevention programming and advocacy for the campus. Today, I run a therapy private practice and engage in mental health research and advocacy, and I'm on the mental health board. But I'll talk more about that in a moment. So I'm coming here tonight to address those of you who are grieving the horrific loss of Sonia Massey and wanting to know what can be done to help make sure no one else has to go through something so awful. I think back to an experience I had working at UIUC years ago. As I mentioned, I coordinated sexual assault prevention education for the campus, and that meant not only working with students to help them understand these issues, it also meant working with other professionals on campus to address the problem. I would frequently be in spaces with police officers, detectives, and leaders who worked on sexual assault cases. I'll never forget this one day when I gave a presentation to some new officers. I heard them talking a lot about getting the bad guy and helping the good guy. I had to explain to them that the good guy, bad guy binary in their thinking could actually result in some problems. There's no such thing as a perfect survivor. And sometimes the people who are the most traumatized are also the most angry, the most scattered, the most all over the place. And instead of taking that as a belief that they're lying, you actually need to take it as a sign that they're hurting and telling the truth. Similarly, sometimes a person who is engaged in sexual assault doesn't look like a bad guy. He might be the person's partner, a campus leader, someone with a lot of clout and charisma. In fact, it is those very qualities that could put somebody into the position of being able to harm someone, and that a desire to gain power at whatever cost might lead them to develop those behaviors. When we make assumptions about who is good and who is bad, it leads us to stereotyping the people we serve, and we may lead to people who need help being rejected, and people who have caused harm being let off the hook. These officers were people who needed education on the deeper dynamics of sexual assault cases. They're people that I worked with every day. They needed education on how power and privilege manifest in these situations, and they needed education on how to better support someone in the throes of trauma and crisis without relying on stereotypes and erroneous assumptions. There are two reasons I mention this story. The first is that I think the kinds of assumptions and harmful beliefs I found in those officers are similar to the kinds of assumptions and harmful beliefs carried by those who commit violence toward individuals they are supposed to be there to help. And that those who are responsible for the death of Sonia Massey may well have held some of those beliefs. The second is that I know that a well-coordinated, strengthened set of mental health resources can partner with law enforcement to do crisis response better. And not only that, but that these services can do proper prevention education, like the kind I did for the officers at UIUC, such that these problematic beliefs and behaviors that stem from them can be interrupted before they harm more people. Sonia Massey should have been met with support and non-judgment. Law enforcement should be supported towards seeing everyone they work with as fully human. Crisis situations should be responded to by mental health professionals who understand crisis and trauma well. And the community should learn together about the factors that lead to mental health crises and violence, as well as to learn about the resources that can help with healing and prevention. So I've set the stage for why strengthened mental health resources and a focus on collaboration could help Sangamon County to prevent others from going through what Sonia Massey and all of her loved ones here tonight have gone through. A mental health board is one very important, meaningful, and effective way of doing this. And so now I'd like to turn things over to Lynn Canfield, the director of our Champaign County Mental Health Board. I prepared her for this, that I would be turning it over now. among other rules, many rules that she has. I couldn't possibly name them all, but they're probably in a bio somewhere that you have. And she'll share more about what all you can do with a mental health board in this community. And then when she's shared, I'll turn it over to Mike, and then I have some closing remarks from my perspective as a mental health board member. So Lynn, take it away.
Hi. All right. So I talk about it all day long, every day, even if people don't want to talk to me about it. So I would like to invite you all in the interest of time, whether it's I abbreviate comments now and you ask questions later, or feel free to email me, because a lot of the things that y'all reported out on a few minutes ago are very close to my heart and the work we do in Champaign County. So a few things. Champaign County's mental health board has existed since at least 1972. It was funded by referendum in 1972, around the same time as several other mental health boards in the state were funded. And those mental health boards formed a state trade association, which is how we know each other. And that's the Association of Community Mental Health Authorities of Illinois. And I'm the president right now, but eagerly looking forward to the end of my tenure as president, during which then I'll be past president and have a lot more time to do things like email with y'all about aspects of this which may be important to you. So I said Champaign County. I don't think we're so far away that you don't know about our problems. And I think it is important to name the people who, for whatever reason, we did not have structures in place to prevent a tragedy. The names of the people who've passed that spurred us to do something include, in our county not so long ago, Kewan Carrington. And I don't know if y'all know about him, but we had started at least 20 years ago requiring all of the agencies that we fund to have an active cultural and linguistic competence plan. We did not provide a lot of structure to those. When Kewan Carrington was murdered, he was 14 years old in his grandma's backyard. He was murdered by a police officer. So that sparked a lot of concern, activity, and community conversation, which we really needed to strengthen some of the structures that we were, or to create structure to some of the work that we were doing. So now our cultural and linguistic competency planning has very specific requirements, and we're looking for improvements in relationship to various communities who may be undervalued, underserved. It's Champaign County. It's not a secret bubble. We have very concerning data around incarceration of youth and the incarceration of Black citizens without access to mental health services where those might be appropriate. So we have a lot of work to do. I'm not talking down. The work is really important. I, as a staff person, am very involved in a lot of collaborations over at least 12 years across law enforcement, education, and mental health to improve the systems, just talking to each other, if not getting better. It's a heavy lift, but the main thing that we do is fund a lot of programming, and this is the opportunity that community mental health boards bring, which is that you can fund programs that look like maybe a good answer to whatever's going on in your particular community at the time. Whether the state is funding it or not, you now have a mechanism to do that. You also have a powerful mechanism and a mandate to be the entity that understands what Sangamon County needs. The mental health board is responsible for doing that. And you can do a lot of things with an understanding of unmet needs. You can talk to other county government about how those needs might be better met. You can talk to the state, you can advocate at the federal level. And I do all of those things. And that's, the major thing we do is fund agencies to provide services, as Molly has said, but the other pieces are really important too, and I would be very happy to answer questions or have a continuing dialogue with y'all. There are many statewide advisory opportunities right now that you might be very ready for, with or without a mental health board. So I think that's enough for me to say right now. But to say, like, to be continued at your pleasure.
Yeah, my name's Mike Murray, and I'm here from DuPage County, which is the second largest county in Illinois and the 19th in the whole country. And 10 years ago, we didn't have any mental health boards. But I would hear from my neighbors that thought that they were having trouble access services. I'm sad to say that we've had similar incidences in DuPage County. And as a matter of fact, I have friends who organized a group called Unity Partners that work specifically with police departments to help overcome these things. Regina Brandt, I'd be happy to forward the information about that. But in establishing the mental health boards, a lot of people thought like nobody's going to want to vote to increase their taxes. We all feel we're all overburdened with that, except for one group, and that group was the police departments. The police departments were always our biggest supporters. And so mental health boards are one of the few things that you can do as a grassroots group. And that's the avenue that we took, okay? And the police departments were the ones that allowed us to appear at their open houses and things like that. And if you do it as a grassroots group, you collect signatures and lots of signatures. We probably collected 8,000 to 10,000 signatures. So from that place of having no mental health boards 10 years ago, we now have 8 of the 9 townships, or majority of the population, have it. And that they have funded so many services, so many gaps in services, and really transformed our community. And you might be surprised that one of the models that we follow was really initiated in Livingston County, right close to here. They have something called the Children's Network, and in my community, we placed a great emphasis on prevention, recognition, so we can get early diagnosis, because that can just transform things. And I included that. One thing that I was surprised, as our county board, we have something called the Prevention and Leadership Team. And if you look at this, you can see what happens when you have a program. You'll see that in the last 10 years, our usage of drugs has gone down, suicidal ideation, not perfect. We still got a long way to go. And we gained this through something called the Illinois Youth Survey. I was very surprised that you guys did not, there's no schools in Sangamon County taking the Illinois Youth Survey. So that would be one thing I would absolutely say. You need to make sure that you gather appropriate data and information, and this is a simple thing that your community can do. It costs nothing to start to gain that data. It happens every 2 years. The other thing I want to say, that when we were working to pass the referendum, the critical thing is to get information out to people. I'm the only person on my block that goes out at 5:30 in the morning in my pajamas to grab the paper. Used to be when we moved in our house 37 years ago, there was a lot of people I could wave hi to, but not the case now. And social media, as we know, is one way we can get information out, but also can get misinformation. So you have to really work. That is one of the ways that we use, like those videos that you saw, we put on social media. The other thing that we just did the last cycle, we did pass 3 referendum just in this November, is we visited, if you get a referendum on the ballot, we visited every single elected legislative body and explained to them how mental health board work. I have a fact sheet here, 708 mental health board basic facts. I would suggest that someone from your commission should visit every one of the legislatures, because that's where people go and ask questions of their local boards. And you want to make sure that they have the correct information to tell people. And then, of course, we do monitor in our group, our grassroots group. You know what a grassroots group is? It means we have hardly any money. So you can do this without investing a lot. Those videos were done by volunteers. Our literature is all designed by volunteers, and so it's minimal cost to do the referendum. So I think I could talk like Lynn for hours. about mental health boards. The only last thing I would say is that in my particular township, because the police departments were backers, we went from no social workers in 3 of the um, departments to now each one has a social worker. And the return rate is gone down. COVID threw a little thing where, you know, that threw things out of kilter for a little bit. And our police departments absolutely love having that. So that's one simple positive thing we did in our community. To name a lot of other things, we did outpatient drug clinics, so many things, great things we fund for my house, about $18 a year. I wish it was more, you know, so that's all I have to say. I hope you got some hard questions. I like hard questions. How about you? Yeah.
I do.
Oh, is it,
Go ahead.
thank you. That's okay. I wanted to circle back to speak briefly about what it's like to be a member of the Champaign County Mental Health Board. And I do have also a list of some of the things that we fund in Champaign County, which are in many ways filling the gaps when federal and state funding are not either available for a certain kind of innovative program or are sometimes cut, unfortunately. And I can share more of that later. But I wanted to speak a little bit more. You know, we talked about how challenging it can be to access mental health resources, how even strong mental health resources need to be met with coordination and collaboration to extend their reach. How first responders having inaccurate information about those who need mental health support and those who have caused harm can result in catastrophic consequences, and how a coordinated effort like a mental health board that focuses on prevention can mitigate that, and how a mental health board can really help with all of these things and bring ownership of these resources into the hands of the people, and ways that you can help drive forward a commitment in this community to developing one. So I mentioned I came here to speak tonight because I grew up here. I care about this community. Even though I don't live here anymore, my family's here. Many of my loved ones and teachers and friends are here, and I care about the mental health resources here. And I also came to speak tonight because I truly love being a part of the mental health board in Champaign County. It's been truly empowering to be a part of the bigger picture to help find solutions to challenges like a reduced budget or many resources vying for the same funding, to steward the community's investment in mental health, and to make sure our money goes as far as it possibly can to support as many community members as possible. When I convene our Champaign County Mental Health Board meetings, which we have one this Wednesday evening, and we can give you the Zoom information if you'd like to see how one is run, I truly hope when I convene these meetings at each moment of public input that we have community members coming to share their concerns with us, the good and the bad. I want the community to know that there are caring individuals who want to make our resources the best they can be, and that we stand ready as members of our board to do this. And I know that in this community, those same kinds of people exist. Maybe I grew up with some of them and never knew how much they cared about mental health. Maybe they're people I've never met. Maybe there's some of you who are here tonight. Regardless, I offer my strongest endorsement of this community starting a mental health board, and all of us here stand ready to support you if you seize the opportunity. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move to questions now. And Bob, I think you've got the first one.
I view it as a general.
She used the microphone.
I do, and it's a more or less general one. What I'm hearing is tax supported, and you fund things.
Right,
So you take people's money, taxes,
right.
and you put it back into services for people. How do you make those decisions? And by the way, what
I'd like to answer that too.
what
Answer that.
Okay.
We
can
probably
both
all
answer.
have some thoughts on that.
what and along with that, what authority do you have to implement stuff as opposed to just funding stuff?
So every community interprets the law a little bit differently depending on their the legal supports that they have available to them. So we go round and round on this. The statute lays out some expectations and authorities very explicitly. I had one of the attorneys that we've worked with has said if it's not explicitly stated, because it's a county entity, at least ours, you can't do it. So so sometimes we advocate then with the Illinois General Assembly to put more explicit language into the Community Mental Health Act to give us authorities to do things like prior to this year, we could fund scholarships, and that was pretty much it. It's like that, if you start thinking about that, it becomes a pretty awful strategy for workforce development if you're a local entity using local taxes to purchase a scholarship for someone who's going to go somewhere else to take the benefit elsewhere. So scholarship programs are great nationally. I like to go advocate with federal entities to beef up their scholarship programs, do it. But what would be more helpful to us would be educational assistance for people maybe on the job, a social worker who wants to complete their licensure so they can continue to serve in the community, but the licensure process is expensive and sometimes a stipend is helpful. So we had language added this year which allows mental health boards to offer other types of educational assistance toward a robust workforce. So more short-term assistance, certification, licensure fees, which are barriers. So basically, like all the stuff you're asking, like we have some very well-defined processes for procurement of the funds, for monitoring, for accountability and transparency, because we're managing a fairly large fund. Some communities have very small funds, and in those communities, that's probably good government to have, less paperwork, less process. But for us, it's been important to have very high accountability for that.
And how is it that board members are elected, appointed, discovered?
That's also in the statute, the governing body, so this would be the Sangamon County Board.
Yeah.
There's only 2 counties in the whole state who have an executive, and we're in one of them. And so the rules are a little different for us because of the executive. So for y'all, it would be the county board chair nominates and makes the appointment, and then the
Just
county
like
board,
public health.
it's like your board of health. The simple majority ratifies those appointments, and they're appointed, they're volunteer. The only thing they can ever get paid for is reimbursement for expenses. They can't get paid for their time like county board members can be. And there are some qualifications, some professional experience is one of the qualifications. We did successfully advocate for the addition of lived experience as a qualifier for mental health board members. That just went into effect this year.
So you are actually an agency of government.
They are actually an independent unit of government.
Well, I understand,
Yeah.
but you're appointed by the county board in the same
Right.
sense that
Right.
public health is.
Right.
Yeah.
But then they have authority over their own budgets and authority to implement the budget and to manage the funds. What you had asked earlier about mental health board's ability to provide a service, it is very limited. It can only be for 2 years, and only if there's not an entity doing business in the county or township that could provide that service. So it's only a gap, and that's, it's fine with me because it's a lot to monitor the funding and contracts and all that. Yeah.
So a board of health, though, is a good model.
It's very similar.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I would say that we also cover that when we talk with the legislative bodies, and each one is a little bit different. Okay, we have a lot of resources in DuPage County, but one thing that's important to mention is that 708 boards don't provide the services directly. Okay, so they provide small yearly grants that are renewable. I mean, we have some that.
Yeah, so again, this is an interpretation. I have been advised no agreement should last more than 4 years because that's the term of the highest office holder in Champaign County. But we tend to, I think there's something in the statute that maybe makes it like 2 years is the longest. So some counties just kind of make it easy to approve a continuing contract or to continue a program for 1 or 2 more years, but
we renew the contract yearly.
We do like a whole allocation process where applications are submitted, staff review them, add any concerns we might know of with performance or with financial stability of an organization. The board then reviews those applications and the external information, and then they make decisions about what to fund. every year, but we do have some 2-year contracts for very stable programs for which there are no compliance
Yeah, we
issues.
run like the police social workers that we
Yeah.
have been renewed continually. I'll also say that the grants cannot duplicate existing funding. So sometimes people think like, this already exists. No, it can fund things that are underfunded, and there are million gaps in services. There's so many gaps in services, even in a very wealthy county like DuPage County, that you can't believe it. So, we make sure also, we need to talk about a 1 and 3 year plan, which is our boards. If you look at DuPage County, you'll see they develop 1 and 3 year plans so that as a citizen, you can kind of see where the directions is going. And we conduct something called a survey of needs typically to try and do exactly what you're trying to do with this commission and figure out what should we be spending our money on, So it's a pretty developed process. And one of the hardest things to understand about mental health boards, and for me, was the tremendous flexibility that they offer. They really are adaptable to every situation of the many varieties of communities, from Piatt, a county which just passed a mental health board in November that has 16,000 people, to our townships. We have townships because our townships are the same size as, or bigger than most of the counties. They're over 100,000 people.
Are there any other questions? Susan and then Jerry. Brian, then that question should be.
So I have one topic that I'm interested to hear amongst commissioners, thank you. And that's how, if Sangamon County were to create a 708 mental health board, how we structure it so that it is independent and nonpartisan. I mean, it seems important that if we're focusing on the mental health and well-being, it needs to be free of partisan politics. And I don't know how you do that, but I'm hoping someone is wiser than me. The other, it's an observation, and we're all learning in this process. So I'm gonna ask you to forgive me for using you as an object lesson.
Sure.
Part of the reason we are here is because we're addressing systemic racial inequities. And all 4 of you are white, or you are white appearing, and the people on the video are all white appearing. And I'm going to quote Veronica Espina, who cannot interject into this meeting, one of our commissioners. This is relevant because it's hard for people of color to feel they can trust institutions, including mental health services. And many times staff don't have the cultural competencies to provide those services. So we need providers and experts who are people of color and who represent the diversity of our cultures in this community. And I don't see that noted in the description. And we've got more work to do.
Yeah. Okay, I accept that. Yeah, criticism. And we did have a video from a provider of color, if you will, from Ray Graham Association that works to help those with developmental disabilities get job. In our community, which we have a really diverse community. I mean, one of the agencies we fund is ICNA Relief. They have, when I say really diverse, they have 55 different countries that come to their food pantries and clinics with so many different languages. So that is something we're very conscious of and work to correct. But it is hard throughout our state.
Yeah, we're kind of blessed, not monetarily in this county, but we have the multiple medical agencies here. Having said that, a couple of questions. So some of the funding that you may pass out, do you have someone who seeks and gets grants, federal or state, or are you adverse to that? You don't think you should, or why?
It's not, the statute is not super friendly to that. And we would have to, there's a lot that we would have to do what we prefer to do is prepare agencies to seek federal and state funding, support them in developing the capacity to apply, just to apply for state and federal funding. There's so many nonprofit organizations in Champaign County, like maybe 500, and some are quite unsophisticated. So we try to offer them supports to build financial clarity, or to build the capacity for financial clarity so that they can be successful in attaining funding from the federal and state governments. And then we do a lot of advocacy with federal and state governments for offering more funding for the kind of things that would benefit Champaign County.
Okay, and then I have one last comment question. Locally, we have a co-responder system that is in effect. I would fault them for maybe there's not enough awareness within the county where we have mental health professionals actually ride with a CIT officer for 85 hours per week. In addition to that, they're available 24/7, and that includes all county agencies as well as Sangamon County Sheriff's Office as well. And I don't believe I think there's a lack of awareness with that. Having said that, it's funded for another year on an extension of a grant. What would happen if you came in, I mean, or the board, are they going to get rid of that? Because it's taken nearly 7 years to get this thing in place, and it seems to be working well.
We fund a lot.
Not perfect.
Champaign County Mental Health Board is funding a lot of co-response and, a lot of work in that space. It would be nice to get that off our portfolio and let the state and federal governments fund some of those programs, but we got to do the right thing. So we stay in there and do not withdraw funding. I mean, the money's finite and it can't go in all the directions that it needs to go, but there are some directions that are very compelling, people who are in crisis.
And I don't know specifically, I mean, as far as with the agency does it, there's no cost to, and then it's volunteers through Memorial Behavioral Health, as far as I know. I mean, they're paid within, the grant money probably pays for other expenses within.
Right.
I'm not completely sure on it. I've been away from it for 5 years.
Could I respond to not your question, but your comment? I mean, we are the only county in Illinois and maybe one of the only counties in the country that has a full-time culture and linguistic competence coordinator to work on exactly that. It's way too much for one person to do. So the rest of the staff are also responsible for looking at, what we really want is for agencies to do effective outreach and engagement to the undervalued communities within Champaign County, of which there are many. And many, we can say marginalized, but they're systemically undervalued. So that's one strategy, and her work is phenomenal. She's become a nationally recognized trainer and expert, and she's had trainings from Georgetown University, which they stopped being funded to do that under one federal administration. And maybe they got started again last year, but now they're probably going to lose that again. But so I'm not sure where the capacity is to train another person like her, but she's done a really good job of getting the rest of us on that right page. But it is way too much for one person to do. But we're still the only one doing that. So I would say if you get a mental health board and you start staffing up, really push for a staff position like that.
Sure. Yeah. Maybe just close this out too. So I will not be asking for it to go to the work group. I'm okay with us moving forward, but did have a couple questions. I think hoping can help even on the next steps. One of the interests in the mental health work group and me on their behalf, I guess, was interested in making sure that we're not cannibalizing folks that are doing good work. And it sounds like, part of even the scope and limitations that doesn't happen, but maybe you're in a central role at times to also help communicate some of those gaps and needs. Okay.
Oh, absolutely.
It also, some of my background is election law. So I looked at the process and I saw that it looked like the language for a referendum was very specific to a tax levy, if that were to be done. But it also several areas of the act. One instance explicitly refers to it as potentially being supplemental. There's seems to be possibilities, and I know that maybe it's difficult at times, but a tax levy isn't the only place. Oh, so support can be provided, for instance, even from the county level. I imagine from the state association perspective, people will be reaching out for more info. So maybe not for tonight. I definitely appreciate your guys' time. I would be comfortable making a resolution, motioning for a resolution for support, with a couple things that I think maybe can help simplify and provide a flexibility, but strong, like, let's move forward with this.
We'll get to that in just a moment, okay? Do you have any final comments? We're going to get to the business now of this. Well, yeah,
The only comment I would make is the first thing that we do when we collect signatures, when we do it that way, is we ask, do you know anyone that has mental illness, substance abuse, or developmental disability? What does everybody say? I know from doing this for 10 years, everybody in this room is touched. Every single person.
Yep.
And that is the factor that makes it important.
so, well, thank you all for coming. As I said, we have learned a lot and a lot of good ideas here, and you all can have your seats back here, and we'll get to the business of the resolution then. Thank you very much. And while they're moving out from here, I'd say that anyone in the audience who wants to make a comment could make that during the public commentary period at the end of the meeting. And also, those who would like to address the commission on any topic can contact us, and we're happy to hear those requests too. So, okay, so there is a resolution that can be considered tonight. And so now, Brian, I know you got a side conversation going, but you can go ahead with presenting and explaining the motion.
Sure. So page 11 in our packet. I'm going to make a motion for a resolution that I'll read out. I'm going to try to do it in a way that avoids the potential for confusion with the referendum, but gives a strong support for let's move forward, forming this thing and supporting it. And at the end of the day, it's going to be the county that's going to need to do it, and we're going to be the ones asking them to. So that's my preface for the resolution that I'm about to read, and a few adjustments. Establishing a 708 mental health board in Sangamon County. Whereas the Massey Commission is a citizens commission established in response to the tragic killing of Sonia Massey in Sangamon County by a former Sangamon County deputy in July 2024. And whereas the brutal murder began as a cry for help and is a reminder of the inadequacy of mental health infrastructure within law enforcement and the broader need mental health training and supports in our community. And whereas Sangamon County healthcare, nonprofit, and law enforcement institutions face significant challenges in addressing mental health needs, including the availability of services, the growing demand for mental health support, and the necessity for coordinated care across various service providers. And whereas the 708 Mental Health Board is empowered to devote a portion of local sales and property tax proceeds to funding critical mental health services, thereby ensuring sustainable and targeted financial resources to address these needs. And whereas 70 of Illinois' 102 counties, including Macon, Christian, and Montgomery, have established similar bodies under the authority of the Illinois Community Mental Health Act. And whereas the establishment of a 708 Mental Health Board under the Illinois Community Mental Health Act, 405 ILCS 20, provides an effective and accountable mechanism for the planning, funding, and delivery of mental health services within local communities. And moving down to the be it resolved. Now therefore be resolved by the members of the Massey Commission on this 18th day of November 2024 that the Sangamon County Board authorize the formation of a representative 708 Mental Health Board and provide the necessary support to implement it.
Is there a second to that motion? Second by Susan. Is there discussion? Okay, Bob.
Slight change.
Microphone.
Maybe I wasn't reading it correctly. Would you read the now therefore be it resolved again?
Sure. And this is my best way to try to avoid any confusion on limiting and frankly, any legal confusion going forward, and just say they need to move forward. They can form it, they can support it, and it should be representative. Those are the changes that you're about to hear. Now therefore be it resolved by the members of the Massey Commission on this 18th day of November 2024 that the Sangamon County Board authorize the formation of a representative 708 mental health board and provide the necessary support to implement it.
So this assumes that the county board can allocate funds to get it rolling. Is that correct? It doesn't need to be approved?
Them and others, as was kind of brought up to us, every 708's been a little different. I am comfortable with what I've seen and what I'm confident would be supported at a minimum from the county. It doesn't just have to be them.
But the referendum is not required. Okay.
Any other discussion? Jerry? Yes.
I don't know enough about it and how this might conflict with what took a long time, a lot of sweat, tears, and anxiety to create. And I fear we'll end up going backward with it. I may be completely wrong, but I don't know that, so I don't feel comfortable voting for this.
Okay. Bob?
What I would, go
And-
ahead. Sorry.
And your urgency for this, or the commission's urgency this evening was if it were going to be a referendum, is that correct? If we were going to
Well,
submit this as a referendum.
The idea is that the county board still has that option.
And I understand,
But that, yes, that is the urgency.
okay, so if it doesn't need a referendum, then the urgency goes away, is that correct?
I would say it doesn't go away, actually.
What I would say, Bob, is I think not everybody's going to agree on it exactly, but this is my best way to support something that's going to have to go to the county board. Right now, it's being asked for them to, if there were be a referendum, we're asking them to do anything that is legally possible to move forward for a 708 board. Nobody gets to hide behind anything. Now, unfortunately, I had 72 hours and they got, a little longer to actually put some legal counsel on it. But I would say that we're telling them to move forward. Whatever is legally required, we're telling them to move forward with it.
Would you read it one?
No problem. Now therefore be it resolved by the members of the Massey Commission on this 18th day of November of 2024 that the Sangamon County Board authorize the formation of a representative 708 mental health board and provide the necessary support to implement it.
Is there a reason we can't table this and vote on it next month?
The answer to that is if that urgency that it's been brought to us,
From the county board?
we would probably have to have a special meeting or something like that over the same thing and probably have the
Yes,
same
here.
conversation and
Right.
Here's another question for us.
Alvin?
sorry.
It's okay. Okay, let's say if it has to be a referendum, it has to be on the ballot, right?
Yes.
Okay, so how soon do we need to vote on this in order for it to get on a ballot before the voters? Because nonetheless, we're just only making a recommendation. So if we're making a recommendation, then before the Sangamon County board votes on anything, they have to run it through their legal as well. So how soon do we have to make a recommendation on this?
We have to make it now because the Sangamon County Board has one meeting before the deadline.
Okay, well, I think that solves it. as in regards to the tabling it. So let's go ahead and discuss this and let's make the recommendation to the Sangamon County Board.
Okay, we'll vote. All in favor say aye. All opposed, nay. The motion carries. Thank you. Okay, next order of business is the topic, power to recall the Sangamon County Sheriff. Second presentation is a discussion of this. Sam Canman, we welcome you to the front to present this topic to the commission. Same table as the others were. You can certainly begin with your own self-introduction before your presentation. And once your presentation is complete, we'll open it up to discussion and invite questions from the commissioners. Okay. Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the commission. Well, let me.
You can have two microphones.
Yeah, I can have two. Thank you for allowing me to address the commission and, on the issue of recall, whether we should have the right to recall our county sheriff. I was here last month when all of you voted to ask the Department of Justice to investigate the sheriff's office, including hiring practices and our 911 dispatch. And the DOJ, as you all know, has now agreed to do that. So I want to congratulate the commission on your action of last week, and thank you for that action. Your work is bearing fruit already. You've all got my bio, so I'm not going to go into, my background. I represent District 18 on the county board, and the reason, well, we all know that after the tragic killing of Sonia Massey, more and more information revealed red flags in former Deputy Sean Grayson's record that were or should have been known by Sheriff Jack Campbell when he hired Grayson. There were calls by the Massey family, by many citizens, elected officials, including the governor and lieutenant governor, for Campbell to resign because the people had lost confidence in their sheriff. And initially, the sheriff held fast. He said, "No, I'm not resigning." He said this on numerous occasions. He's not going to resign. He needs to stay in office. Eventually, though, in August, just before our August board meeting, when the board was actually going to vote on an advisory referendum that I and others had introduced to ask the voters as an advisory question, should Sheriff Jack Campbell resign, just before that board meeting and that vote was to occur, he did the right thing and eventually announced that he would leave office at the end of August. However, his resignation was totally voluntary. The sheriff could have refused to resign and would still be in office today. That's a possibility. Under current law, there is no way to remove an elected sheriff from office. Many other states, including neighboring states such as Missouri, Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio, and 20 other states, voters do have the right to recall their local elected officials by gathering a large number of signatures on a petition, filing it with the proper official, and then the question of recalling that elected official goes on the ballot at the next election, and if a majority vote yes, the elected official is removed. 39 states have some form of recall. The way I see recall is it provides a safety valve when the people lose confidence in their sheriff, or could be other elected officials, but we're talking about the sheriff tonight. It gives people the power to right a wrong that would otherwise fester till the end of that particular elected official's term. One of the ways our state addressed the Rod Blagojevich debacle some years ago was to enact recall for the office of governor by adding a constitutional amendment to our Constitution. And almost 70% of Sangamon County voters voted yes on that amendment. Fortunately, recall of the governor has never had to be used, but it is there just in case. And in the same vein, I believe that the Massey Commission should consider recall as one of the ways to address the Sonia Massey tragedy, even though I, and I'm sure all of you, hope it never has to be used in the future. At our August County Board meeting, at least 17 I counted, there may have been more citizens, including one of the members of this commission, addressed the county board and demanded recall for our county sheriff. You were presented with a poll. I don't know if that could be put up on the screen, but there was a poll earlier this year in the state of Illinois where the people polled, 80% said they favored recall for the office of mayor, which I think is kind of, the sentiment would be similar for the office of sheriff. And it was even higher among Republicans. 90% of Republicans said they were in favor of recall. And after the tragic killing of Sonia Massey, I remember that Ben Crump, who's the attorney that represents the family, was asked if the sheriff should resign. And he answered, I think quite rightly, that it should be up to the voters of Sangamon County. And that's what recall does. It gives the voters of the county the right to recall the elected sheriff when they have lost confidence in him, when they don't feel he can do his job. And I was going to say, with regard to the 17 people that addressed the county board in August on recall, I've been I was on the city council for 8 years, and now I'm in my second term on the county board. And in all that time, we've listened to citizens address us on many issues, and I never had remembered any occasion where as many as 17 citizens came and addressed us on any particular issue. Now, an Illinois appellate court has held that Article 7, Section 6 and 7 of our state constitution gives home rule and non-home rule units of local government the power to enact recall by placing a binding referendum on the ballot. And then if a majority of voters vote yes, recall is adopted. 3 municipalities in Illinois have adopted recall under this power. That's Buffalo Grove, Arlington Heights, and Wheeling. And the county board under this provision has the power to put such a binding referendum on the ballot at the April 1st election. And as one of your co-chairmen stated, we do have one more meeting in December prior to the January deadline, election calendar deadline, to put a referendum on the ballot for the April 1st election. Three other board members and myself did introduce the resolution to put a binding referendum on the ballot on April 1st, 2025 on the question of whether to give the voters of Sangamon County the power to adopt recall. The reason we picked the office of sheriff, is because of what happened, because of the Sonia Massey tragedy, and also the sheriff is the only elected official that has the power to exercise lethal force. So that's why I think that's very important. And if you do recommend to the county board to adopt recall for the county sheriff, and the county board does pass that resolution, all this does is it gives the voters, it leaves it up to the voters, says to the voters, it's up to them to decide, do they want recall or do they not want recall? So this goes on the ballot April 1st. Majority of voters say, well, no, we don't want to have the right to recall our county sheriff. They vote no, and it's defeated. If they want the right to recall, they vote yes, and then it's adopted. So I'd be happy to, I know you've been here, it's a long night. I don't want to belabor the issue. I think I've covered the highlights, but if anyone has any questions, I'd be glad to answer them. And again, I appreciate your consideration.
Questions? Colin?
I don't really have a question, but I have just a comment and a statement to my fellow commissioners. But I think that this is a no-brainer. Just where all it is just asking the voters for them to decide. It's the same as even with the Springfield Police Department. If the chief of police does something wrong, then the mayor has the authority to fire, demote, or anything else. And that's the same thing even with that's what it should be, even with the Sangamon County Sheriff's Office. And we even seen, even with Jack Campbell, to where he wasn't answering the calls of resigning. He wasn't answering anybody's calls. I mean, he wasn't answering to the public or anything like that. So I think that this is just a safety net for the voters and for the county, period. So, and I think it should go to the voters, but that's all I wanted to say in regards to that.
Completely echo Calvin's sentiments. I support this, but I just had a question regarding if it goes onto the ballot and it miraculously passes and the communities vote for it, how does it, once we have the ability to recall, if something happens, how do we then enact that? Would the county board have to say, okay, we're going to put it on the ballot for people to be able to recall, or how does that part work?
No, voters would have to get signatures. If somebody wanted to initiate a recall, it would be up to a citizen to get signatures on a petition like this, and they would have to get signatures equal to 8% of the last vote for governor, which is about a little under, from the last vote for governor, that would be about a little under 7,000 signatures. So it's not an easy task. It's not that, to get that number of signatures. It could be done. I mean, years ago, with the help of a lot of other citizens, volunteers, we were able to get the 8% signatures to put an advisory referendum on the ballot on whether the size of the county board should be reduced in half to 15. And so it is possible to get that number of signatures, but it's not easy. And I don't think it should be easy, because recall is, there should be I think an overwhelming, very great support to recall an elected official before an elected official is recalled. That's.
Mr. Kahneman, I have one question for clarification, and I don't object to this at all. However, is that common language down here? You said 8%. This reflects 10%.
Where does it say 10%?
Well, bear with me in my landfill brain. I'm trying to sort this out. Yeah, yes, at the bottom. And
okay, well then it says not numbering not less than 10. Okay, well that's how we did the resolution. Okay, I thought it was it's even a greater.
I thought it was less. 6.5.
I mean,
well, that is a segue to my actual question, where when it refers to the petition being signed by the electors, and the number that it meets is 10% of the total countywide vote cast at the last general election where the Sangamon County Sheriff's was on the ballot. Is that common language?
yes, I think
You referenced the governor, was it, or?
Well, in the election code, I think there's a provision for getting initiatives on the ballot, like an advisory referendum by initiative petition, and that's 8%. So we may seek to amend this to change it to 8%, but 8% or 10% is still, whatever it is, it's a large number. It's not going to be easy to put an elected official on the ballot to be recalled. But the county board, so anyway, in any event, it's up. This is the resolution we introduced. It'll be up to the county board to either pass it in this form or to amend it and make it 8% instead of 10%.
I think Kel had something.
Just real quick, and Sam, I know you're an attorney as well, but I just wanted to know, in this Illinois statute, it has to be this 8% instead of the actual county board members?
No, the amount of signatures required for recall, that's up to the local elected body that enacts recall.
Okay, but it has to be they have to actually get signatures in order to do a recall instead of just
Yeah,
the
yeah,
county.
that's the only
Okay.
way to recall an elected
Okay.
official is by get initiative petition.
Okay.
That's the way it's done in, in Wheeling, in those three local governments, Buffalo Grove, Arlington Heights, and Wheeling, that have recall ordinances.
Okay,
That's
because I
how
know
it-
even when it was even Governor Rod Blagojevich, it just took the legislature for them to recall. So that's why I was just
Well,
trying.
the amendment, the amendment that was adopted for the recall of the governor, it was made, it's very difficult to get the required signatures to put it on the ballot, but you have to get, I think, a certain number of legislators have to, from both parties or both chambers. I haven't studied that amendment recently, but in addition to that, then you have to have X number of voters signing the petition. But so that's the process that the Constitution has for recalling the governor. But there is a process.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Sure.
Hi, thank you for this
Sure.
resolution. I just had a couple of questions. When is the sheriff up for reelection?
The sheriff is up for reelection. The current sheriff is up for reelection in 2026. That's when Campbell's term ends, and Crouch is filling out his unexpired term or unfinished term.
So that's why you coincided with the governor's, because that's when the governor's office would be up for
No,
reelection?
that's the law. I mean, the law, the Illinois Election Code says that the Illinois Election Code says to put something on the ballot, you need 8% of the last vote for governor. So that's why, to put like any kind of initiative petition on the ballot.
Okay.
But that's why I thought we had put in the resolution 8%, but I guess it does say 10%. And as I said, we might try to amend that to reduce it to 8%. I think that would be more proper.
I appreciate the time you put into this, Sam. For the sake of time, I'm sure we can debate the election law, whenever, but I'm fine with us moving forward with it. I just wanted to make a statement. Just the last thing I would want us to do is for folks to be surprised if they weren't told that if this, let's say, was passed by the county board and it was on the ballot and somebody, after it got filed, says, I object to this referendum because I think it's unconstitutional. And if they were to win, I would hate for that to be a surprise. I think that there's a real debate whether or not this would be constitutional. I think somebody's got probably more than a fighting chance to keep it on the ballot, but I think that that's probably important. We don't let folks know that, hey, that may be something that happens, that somebody challenges and it doesn't hold up. But otherwise,
and I think I've heard that argument, and I agree with you. I think it is it is authorized by the Constitution. But even if we're wrong and it's not authorized by the Constitution, I think what the commission would be doing by passing a resolution supporting recall is you're stating a policy position that you favor the voters having the right to recall their county sheriff. And if by chance it was held that we didn't have the right to do this locally, it could be done by the state legislature. The state legislature clearly has the power to enact recall for county sheriffs. So either way, I think so. Again, I think what you're, just making a policy statement that you support recall for our county sheriff.
Yeah, and I want to support it too, but I need you to make up your mind, Sam. You said 10% of the total countywide vote cast at the last general election where the office of Sangamon County Sheriff was on the ballot.
Wait, let me.
And then in your presentation, you said governor. So I just need, before we vote on this, I want us to know what we're talking about.
Illinois state law requires 8% for the governor's recall.
That's for the governor's recall.
No. That's to get, if somebody wants to put like an advisory referendum on the ballot, then they could be done by initiative petition, and then that requires, I just gave that as an example, that requires 8% of the last vote for governor. That's in the election code.
And
But this ordinance, I understand your question, and I guess the way it's drafted, it does say to put the recall on the ballot would require under the way it's worded here, 10% of the countywide vote for governor, that number of.
No, sheriff. It says sheriff.
Hey, Jerry.
Oh, for the office of sheriff. Okay, well then that's what it would be, but yeah, 10% of the vote for sheriff. That's what it is. That's.
So, once again, we'll be considering a resolution that may leave some things up to the Sangamon County Board. So just keep that in mind. So Calvin, yeah.
Just one other clarification too as well. This resolution, it went by the Sangamon County State's Attorney's Office or legal, right?
I haven't heard from the Sangamon County State's Attorney,
But
an opinion on this particular resolution.
Okay, so it was just drafted by you, but it wasn't ran past them?
I did not get any opinion. I haven't heard of any opinion from the state's attorney.
Okay, I was just asking because in regards to the last comments about was it legal and so forth, so that's why I was just curious about it.
Well, there is an appellate court opinion, that I mentioned. It's Henyard versus Village of Dalton.
Okay.
48 Northeast 2nd, 220, 2016 LAP 1st, 153374, which states that because recall affects both the term of office and the manner of selection of that, this is something that can be enacted, but only by a binding referendum put on the ballot by either a home rule or a non-home rule unit.
Okay. And just another statement, but I think the resolution is great. I agree with it, and quite honestly, I think it should go for every elected office where they could be recalled as well. But I definitely agree with it. So thank you, Sam.
Well, if you want to pass a resolution recommending recall for all county
I
elected
think our
officials.
scope is limited with this, so. But I definitely agree that every elected office should have that mandate to where they could be recalled, so.
Okay,
I agree with you.
Thank you, Sam, for the comments, and
Sure.
we'll finish our discussion, and we appreciate your work on this one. Okay, so we do have a resolution that can be considered tonight, and I'll ask Commissioner Joanne Johnson to present and explain the motion.
Massey Commission Resolution 2. Whereas the Massey Commission was established as a citizens commission in response to the tragic killing of Sonia Massey by a former Sangamon County deputy in July 2024. Whereas this tragedy and the subsequent response of the Sangamon County Sheriff's Office highlighted a significant concern, the citizens of Sangamon County currently lack a mechanism to hold the sheriff accountable for the recruitment, hiring, and training decisions of deputies outside of regular elections. Whereas the commission is committed to public accountability as a core value and mandate for all public bodies serving the residents of Sangamon County. Whereas the commission believes that new accountability measures must be implemented for the Sangamon County Sheriff's Office to ensure responsible leadership and the protection of public safety. Whereas the Sangamon County Board has the authority to initiate and submit a countywide referendum. Whereas the Sangamon County Board has the resources necessary to evaluate the constitutional and legal questions regarding recall provisions for non-home rule counties. Whereas the commission believes it is in the best interest of the residents of Sangamon County to act expeditiously to submit a proposition granting recall authority for the office of the Sangamon County Sheriff at the consolidated elections to be held on April 1, 2025. Now therefore be it resolved by the members of the Massey Commission on this 18th day of November 2024 that the Sangamon County Board should evaluate the constitutional and statutory pathways for Sangamon County to authorize a referendum on the question of recall for the office of the Sangamon County Sheriff and take all legally authorized steps to effectuate such referendum at the earliest possible election. Approved by the Massey Commission of Sangamon County, November 18th, 2024.
Well, not quite yet, but.
Not quite yet.
Anyway, is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Seconded by Kristen. Is there discussion?
Excellent.
Yeah, I agree with that. Very nice. Okay, hearing or seeing no discussion, we'll proceed to a vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. That motion carries and is adopted. Thank you very much. So, yeah. For the commissioners, is there any other new business to discuss before we move to the public commentary? Brian?
We don't have to, we've been here a while tonight, but if we maybe between now and our next meeting, for those that are in a situation where incident reporting is something, so whether we've got plenty of state agency connections, legislative connections, to try to maybe at the next meeting be ready to talk about it, a process. So if somebody from the public calls any of us, anybody on one of our work groups,
right,
make anything concerning really, I guess is what I'm getting at. Maybe we should just have something in place that they know where to go.
Bob?
Yes, I have a suggestion for a soon upcoming meeting. I'd like for someone to walk us through the state statute that creates the office of the sheriff. And the reason I've read it, but I'm not an attorney and I sure don't know case law, but I'd like to know what recommendation or have a notion of where we need to make recommendations if we're going to effectuate a change. Changing policy is one thing. The next sheriff can come along and say, no, don't want that policy. The law is a different thing. So I'd like, and I have a suggestion. The state attorney's office has two divisions, criminal division and civil division. And the head of the civil division is Joel Benoit.
Yes.
And that seems to be one place we could go to at least get started on.
Okay, good suggestion. Thank you. Anything else from the commissioners? Okay, it's now time for public comment. Megan has the list, three. So we'll ask you to use the podium here. So Douglas Yule-Holt is first.
We already started off on a good foot, so I simply just wanted to say that it's for the option to have that on the ballot for the simple fact that we need to know who we can trust. Think of it as when we. I'm sorry, I got other things in my mind as well. When a waiter messes up on your order, and we send it back because we want it corrected the right way. When we take our car to the shop and we get back and you still hear that dangling noise in the background in the car, you send it back. And the reason we send things back is because we didn't get good service. And in not getting good service, we complain about it because we paid for it. So when we put somebody in office and they give us a disservice, man, we paid for it. We paid for it with our vote. We paid for it with our tax dollars. We paid for it with our trust in them. Then that person, we need to have the option of recalling them. Not only recalling them, but to send them back to wherever they came from, because we are not on the same page. And when we realize and understand that, that is why we need this option on the ballot for recall. Thank you.
Next, Jawanda Burridge, and I'll just ask every speaker to say their name because I might not pronounce your name right. So.
To the commission, I really, really appreciate the hard work and the effort that you guys are putting in. I appreciate it. You're showing me how to act accordingly should I be able to get on a commission such as this. I really appreciate it. It is a experiment, and you guys are doing well. I kind of want to talk to Sergeant Jerry Castles. First, thank you for your 29 years of service with the Mental Health Task Force within the Sangamon County Sheriff's Department. However, your first introduction to us, you preceded it by letting us know that we were not going to be happy with what you had to say. And today, you reminded me of who you were. However, I don't understand. What I want to know is, why does the term systemic racism, why does that make you choose violence within this body? When I say that systemic racism must be at the forefront of the Sonia Massey's Commission's mission statement, because it accurately encapsulates the pervasive and insidious nature of racial injustice that permeates every aspect of our society, including the institution from which you retired from. To ignore this reality is to perpetuate the very systems that harm marginalized communities. I don't understand, Mr. Castle, how you can say you don't want systemic racism to be encapsulated in your mission statement. It makes no sense. You just voted to recall a sheriff who did harm, but you don't want to talk about the harm. It doesn't add up. Systemic racism is not just an abstract concept. It is a lived experience for countless individuals who face discrimination in housing, education, employment, and law enforcement. By explicitly acknowledging systemic racism, the Commission will confront the root causes of inequity rather than merely addressing the symptoms. We cannot afford to shy away from uncomfortable truths. To create meaningful change and foster accountability, we must dismantle the structures that sustain racial disparities. The language we choose matters. It shapes our understanding and guides our actions. By naming systemic racism, the Sonia Massey Commission has committed to a bold and unwavering pursuit of justice that acknowledges the depth of problems and mobilizes our community to fight for real transformative change. Mr. Castle, are you for transformative change, real transformative change? Be clear. Anything less is a disservice to the legacy of Sonia Massey and a denial of the ongoing struggles faced by Black and marginalized communities. We demand that the mission statement reflect the urgency of this fight, because the time for change is now. So, Mr. Castle, Sergeant Castle, please call it what it is. Systemic racism, systemic violence. Thank you.
Ken, you're up. Your turn, Ken. Oh, Ken. Oh, yeah, sorry. My fault.
Juwan didn't want to go after me. I was actually slated to be second. Juwan didn't want to go after me, and I don't blame her.
I'll be perfectly honest. I wanted to speak at the last one, but it got rescheduled, and my job doesn't really allow for that kind of flexibility. But I think it's important to follow up on the things I said at the very first meeting we had. I don't see one person on that board under the age of 30. That's a problem. As I noted, how many people on this board have even felt the cuffs of a police officer other than the ones that have put them on people? That's a problem. This community is supposed to be formed of people that came from the very streets right outside this door. How many of you people are even from this neighborhood? I mean, I think that's a problem that I tried to address the first time, and all I saw after that are lobbyists, retired police officers who don't even accept the basic premise of this commission, which is deeply frustrating. I'm 42 years old. I know what systemic racism is because it's existed in my life in all forms and fashions, and I'm white. It isn't that hard to acknowledge or recognize it, and to be on the Sonia Massey Commission and to argue that means you shouldn't be here, quite frankly, regardless of your experience, period. Because if you don't accept the idea that black, brown, and everyone else are under the yoke of white supremacy, as we just saw take place in our recent election, you're too far gone for us to reach out now. We don't have time to drag you to this point when it's very clear, based off the CBS News investigation that just dropped, the 8 dead inmates in our Sangamon County jail, the continued and perpetual abuse, the most recent police chase that went multi-county with a suspect that somehow magically died. Just showed up on the side of a road dead. Fascinating how that happens when the police get involved. And it's a little frustrating to have to argue with somebody about whether or not systemic racism exists. It feels like I live in another universe to hear that. And I'm sure other people find it disturbing as well, because what frustrates me is when we talk about public comment, there's 3 speakers. This is one of the most poorly advertised meetings I've ever attended. The only way I know about it is because I already have the commission notes on all the meeting dates. Same with the subcommittee. The problem is nobody else does. Where do I find that? On a website. When's the last time somebody typed a website in? Seriously. The Ferguson Commission that this is based off of had over 2,000 members of public comment, over 30 meetings in less than 11 months. At the pace we're going and with the number of people that are speaking, we'll be here for years to reach those numbers. And that is not only frustrating because the longer we take, the more people get harmed in the process. Quite frankly, it's deeply frustrating to watch these kind of organizational slow crawls at a glacial pace when we watch somebody sitting right out in this audience help the unhoused find housing, while our city sat there and did nothing for months after they tried to get them to put them in jail for the crime of sleeping on the street. So I asked the commission to really consider the idea that when we talk about these subcommittee hearings and all this stuff, what is it really going to lead to? Are we just looking for empty recommendations? Are we just looking to talk about the same thing that we already know is happening? That our sheriff's department is racist and corrupt and hires broken individuals. And we can't keep offering the same empty training, because I'm going to offer a tidbit here that I think's been left out of the discussion when we talk about Sean Grayson. Because everybody talks about the red flags that man had, and they were pretty hard to miss, although they managed to. I think the part that really upset me that I read about is that the Illinois Law Enforcement Training and Standards Board has offered a state-certified course in crisis intervention. Did you guys all know that? They've offered a 40-hour course. I would say that's pretty sufficient, right, guys? Guess who took it? Sean Grayson. That's right. Less than 4 months before he shot Sonia Massey in her living room. So when we talk about changing standards, what exactly are we going to do? Teach a bunch of cops that they shouldn't shoot black people? Because that's what these programs amount to. What I know that you're shaking your head, but the outcome of that is that we talk to the police and they say the same things to us. They're not going to end qualified immunity. They're not going to create a statewide database to hold corrupt and dangerous cops accountable. And quite frankly, the delays that have been put in front of CESA from being enacted, which could have possibly prevented the outcome that got us all here, is disgusting. It's only going to be implemented next year. And in the meantime, I haven't heard one word about it at this commission meeting. We're talking about a mental health board, but what about the fact that we already have a state-funded one coming here to help change the way of how police are not actually going to be responding to calls? You still have 1 minute, or I'm done. Okay, sorry, but that's my point, though, is just as a commission, it feels like we're just sort of sitting here kind of talking about stuff. And it's frustrating that what we're talking about should be a basic, understood, from the very beginning premise that systemic racism is present in policing, healthcare, psychological care, and just about every other aspect that our lives touch, from garbage collection to water service. And if we have to drag someone there, we're already failing.
We do have another speaker, Gail Simpson. There's Gail right there.
Good evening. I apologize. I was in another meeting and wanted to rush over here to make sure that I had my say. I'll be brief. This has been troubling me since this commission was formed. I think it appalling that the Massey family was offered a bridge to nowhere to compensate for her murder. There should be a law. The county building should be named after her. The Sonia Massey. But this is what happens. We'll give them this much so they won't ask for this much. It's an insult. And I know the family may in their grief have said yes, but I hope that they say no. It's a bridge to nowhere. Nobody will know why. If there is a law, if there's a training module, that every individual who goes through any kind of police training has to view that video to say, this is what we don't do in law enforcement. That's what needs to happen. Thank you.
And that is, any more, Megan? No, okay. So that does complete the night. We thank everyone for gathering with us tonight. The next full commission meeting is scheduled for Monday, December 16th. It'll be at the Bank of Springfield Center. There is a website, masseycommission.com. You can watch for more information about this meeting and the work group sessions that are scheduled in December. And is there a motion for adjournment? Oh, yes?
At the NAACP building on Wednesday at 6 p.m., which is located at 801 South 11th Street. It's going to be a viewing in regards to Patrick Burns, who had died after getting tased and hogtied by the Sangamon County Sheriff's Office. I viewed the video. I think everybody should go to the building, look at the video, because it opens your eyes to a lot of the past practices that the Sangamon County Sheriff's Office has been involved with. So
Can you send that information?
yeah, yep.
Yeah. Calvin, what day did you say that was?
It's gonna be Wednesday at 6 p.m.
This Wednesday?
Yes.
At the NAACP
Yes.
building, yeah. Okay.
And I'll email it out to everybody too, but I encourage everybody to go and look at it, so.
Sure. Any other announcements? Is there a motion to adjourn? And a second? That's all we need. Thank you very much.
I think they'll let us sit next to Chokin. I think they'll let us sit next to